Recently at the very same retreat where I met this young man. We were sharing tools and techniques to improve our habits, ourselves, our health. Actually, it was about chakras. And as you know, in our body there are energy centers. In our astral body, they say the energy body, even qualities like ego, which I'll make the point that we ultimately, Swami used to say, the one knot you have to untie is the ego. And the ego resides at the negative pole of the sixth chakra, they say, and we have to ultimately transcend that. And we were speaking of chakras, we were going through each of them, and we were speaking of the heart. And I said, yes, we have to do this. I said, it's not easy. I said, I've been personally practicing the affirmation of kindness for the last 12 years. I almost do it a few times every week. And I saw some mouths opening, like 12 years, you still haven't gotten it. Or, then somebody said, I have a question here. Are you not kind? I said, no, people tell me I'm more or less kind. And I said, I have to add, I said that I was fairly kind even when I came on the spiritual path. For example, I used to go to orphanages. I would give away part of my salary to needy people, elderly people. I would stop my bike and vehicle to help somebody needy on the road. I would pray for people. So I said, I was fairly kind by worldly standards. I said, but when I met Swami Kriyanandaji, his standards of kindness, in a very loving way, just like Christ was telling his disciples, don't look here. Like another time he would say, let the dead bury the dead, let the blind are leading the blind. The point was, the world may tell us, oh, you're so good. And Swamiji said that we go through that soul evolutionary stage. You think saints are people. Swami used to say, who slowly, gently cross the roads, and if they see some children, they tap them on their head and smile benignly at them. And he said, very few of us think of saints as unshakable, in their peace and calmness, or as Christ told his disciples, I came not to bring peace, but the sword. And here Krishna is telling Arjuna, oh Arjuna, rise and fight. And he said, my goodness, these two great avatars, what's going on over here? So as I was speaking about kindness, I said, the trouble, and it was good, somebody like Swamiji could pick it up, because he mentioned in a very subtle, profound way in one conversation. It was, as it happens in groups, sometimes you see that a saint is speaking to you, and he spoke of some, incident, I think. And then he said, but we must always be kind. And I said, just in that small statement, he understood, but he was urging me that we must always be kind. And of course, that is what you would expect any saint to urge. But that kindness, over the years, I'm realizing I cannot generate that kindness. One small technique Swamiji gave was, of course, if you say, I am kind, well, who is the I? Ultimately, to practice it on a high level, as Christ is saying, you have to go beyond that sense of I, and go into the virtue itself, you might say. Swami used to say, one good way to practice this is, he said, wake up some morning, any morning, and tell yourself, I'm kindness itself, I'm forgiveness itself, I am generosity itself. And he said, when you affirm that, he said, how else would you behave? You are that quality. And he was, again, picking it up from a high point where, they say that the practitioner, the quality that is being practiced, and the person for which, or situation for which we are practicing, in a high state, they all become one. I don't know how it works, but he was again saying that try to go beyond this sense of I, that it's a good start. So let's see how these things, how can we reach from here, our limited understanding that I am not well, or I am feeling well, I have done something good, I have not done something good, and to ultimately see, because somebody asked Swami Kriyanandaji, this is a very common teaching in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am the doer. And somebody asked Swamiji, is God really the doer in everything? It's good somebody put that right there. Really, sir? Is he really the doer in everything? Swami said, oh yes. Then Swami says, don't, and then Swami answered, he said, don't let anybody fool you. by saying, oh, but he needs good instruments and you are a good instrument. He said, because do you really want to be called a good hammer? He said, we are like instruments in the hand of God. Let's say he's the craftsman. And he said, ultimately, he has become everything. When you and I were created, our small memory tells us we were created by our parents. Our mothers conceived us. We came from there. But then the question comes, where did our parents come from? Where did creation come from? Where did nature come from? And Swami says, when you take it back, the scriptures are openly declaring God became everything. And hence, we reach that point in our soul evolution where you do not like the thought. Now, most people would like the thought. I hope people see I'm kind. But Swami says that's an ego active phase. That ego, the same ego, he says, will become a crushing weight one day. And when that comes, at that point we say, how can I go past this? Swami also defined it very beautifully. As you know, he was extremely good with words. Actually, somebody had a reading of his from 3,000 years ago, and it said that no one explains the teachings as beautifully as Kriyananda explains, especially his choice of words is wonderful. I can testify to that, to some degree, that my own experience has been he's very clear with the explanation. For example, if we have to get rid of the ego. Now, Swami says there are two kinds of egoic, you might say, attachments. One, he said, is egotism. And the other is egoism. Can anybody, now not those who were in the morning, because I explained that. We had a wonderful meditation and satsang this morning too. But what is egotism, according to anyone? Can I have some water in the glass over there? Yeah, glass yahin pe. Come on. Vikas, what is egotism, you think? Being egotistical, no? Who are you, to tell me what to do? So I know. Swami used to say, this is the seat of the ego at the medulla oblongata. And he said, when you get tight over here, when somebody threatens your ego, he said that's why the English phrase came. He was looking down upon his nose, that people get so tight that that's the only way they sometimes learn to behave. They continue that way. And of course, on the spiritual path, we know we like to bring that energy. This is the negative. Ego is not bad in itself. It's one of the doors we have to go through. It increases our awareness. The need for renouncing it comes from the sense of the ego is limitation also. So Swami says you have to just bring it over here and you bow, you sing, you focus, you meditate, you feel the breath at this point. All those things happen. You're receiving blessings also, no? When you ask for blessings, in Christianity also, they often give a blessings. Ladies wear a bindi at that point. All these are reminders that finally we have to bring the energy at that point. So egotism is not, I think egotistical people, first of all, may not even enter temples. What is there? But the second and the subtler and more difficult to renounce, Swami Kriyananda ji said, is egoism. And egoism, he said, is the sense of I. And he said, when a devotee realizes that, I don't want to be known this way or that, I don't want to exist, it's a state of separation. And Master said it's a state of delusion. He said, you're God's child. Yes, He has created you. He has become you is a better way to say it. He has become your ego. He says, but you have to ultimately renounce that. And actually the ego in the Mahabharata is demonstrated by one particular character. Can anybody tell me what that character was? Duryodhana? No, he was material desires. Karna, his best friend, was attachment to material desires. That's why they were always promising loyalty to one another. Bhishma Pitama. And Bhishma had a long life, if you read. He was not from that era even. He was surviving or existing for a long time. He had that boon. And he could have gone on because those arrows didn't kill him. And I had forgotten that he actually didn't die with those arrows also, or that night. He died at the very end of the Mahabharata. When everybody else was died, they went and informed him this has happened. But the point over there is the ego even in it is riddled by all those troubles and arrows. And let's say some arrows are good, I don't know how it can be that way, but the ego experiences good things in life and troublesome things. But even then it does not die, it cannot be killed, except the ego has to offer itself. And that is where that concept of is God the doer. Swamiji once gave a lecture, and he would always say, he said, if you ever do anything good and people praise you, tell them, if they can understand, God is the doer. And he said once he gave a lecture, and it was a good lecture, so this lady came up to him later and she said, oh sir, that was a beautiful lecture. And Swami says, God is the doer. She said, really? That, it was like she thought that, oh, God spoke through him. He came through him. And Swami said, oh, I didn't mean it that way. And he said that ultimately we should always remember that it is not you and I that do things, that God is the one by whose grace we are doing it. And this limited ego, when we transform it, when we try to offer it, Swamiji said once he was giving a lecture and he had heard the same thing, God, let God do it. So in the middle of the lecture for 2 minutes, he was quiet. And he said when he was quiet, people, his friends, they all thought, oh my God, he forgot what he had to say, or, or he's frozen out of fear. And Swami said, but I waited, I was praying inwardly, God, take over from here. I don't want to be the speaker, you speak through me. And he said, after 2 minutes, I figured he's not going to speak. That again, the ego has been given to us by God. I don't think any of us prayed or created it. So when we find ourselves with this, in this situation, the way to go forward is to refine that ego, to bring it to the point, to work through it. Like Swami says, while you have the ego, make the best use of it. Use it in the best possible way. And he writes in another chapter that the unhealthy ego, an ego which first of all wants to become big and all that, it realizes it's not happy and it starts becoming a healthy ego. What's a healthy ego? An ego which thinks of others, which gives to others, which prays for others. In the caste system, you can say a Kshatriya is a healthy ego. A Shudra is a lazy ego. No, I can't do this. I asked her for water. She could have easily said, sir, it's closer to you. Why don't you get it? I'll have to walk 3 extra steps. That would be a Shudra consciousness, which fortunately was not there. Now, she could have also thought, okay, I'll give him water. Tomorrow I'll ask him to make me a paratha. At the back of her mind, that is the motivation. That was also not there, I hope. The third thing is, I want to serve, I want to give water, I want to expand my sense of I because it makes me happy. So at the final analysis, a healthy ego, an unhealthy ego is never happy. Lazy people, temporarily they may find happiness, but it doesn't work like that. Sometimes devotees also fall in that trap. I won't do anything, because if I do anything, people might praise me, people might say, look, he or she is always doing things, and no, better not to do anything. If I do nothing, it's like, no problems will arise. The biggest problem will be your energy won't rise and you won't be happy. When you're doubtful, when you're lazy. So that option is also not there, and Krishna makes it clear. He said inaction is impossible while you're breathing. And I'll clarify that point, that he says in the Bhagavad Gita again, before the actionless state, we have to be intensely active. And I think spiritual principles can find a lot of similarities in our physical world also. Think of a rocket. When that rocket has to take off, all the possible energy you can compact in those fuel tanks, all the care in alignment, in direction, and then it takes off. And within a few moments, it is in the effortless, it's past gravity, but it does not, just by being on 1 cylinder or 2 cylinders, it is not going to break through gravity. And again, as it says in the caste system, the only people who unanimously say God is the doer are actually the saints, not even the Kshatriyas, because they have a lot of energy, but there also, Swami says, that sense of I is there. And ultimately, when we can start understanding who is really running this show, who is digesting my food, where did I come from, Why do I feel happy when I serve others? Where is this feeling of goodness coming that I appreciate in others? Might there be a greater intelligence? Just probing those questions, the right questions, start bringing the right answer. Swami used to say that so many times, because see in the Gita again, Krishna says, I will come to most people at the end of their life. So till that time, we will have to work. And Swami used to say that the best approach is to pray to God, I'm happy to work, I'm happy to be an instrument, but you think through me, you act through me, you say things through me. Once somebody came to Gurgaon, where Swamiji was staying towards the end of his life, and they said, I have a message from Mahavatar Babaji, the person claimed. And the message was, he said, Babaji has said, he said, I want you to tell Kriyananda that I am very pleased with the way he is serving and the amount of work that he is doing. And if the need arises, I will extend his life. Now, of course, Swamiji was not a big fan of a long life. If you have, heard of him, he would say, why do I have to live so long? Because, imagine as you're living longer and longer, you're having to do more, serve more. And Swami used to say, Sri Yukteswarji got out at 80, Jnana Mataji even earlier, Master at 62. Here I am at 86 and still going around. But remember, Babaji was pleased. And Babaji was saying that I will bless him, I will do this, and I am pleased with what he is doing. That on one level, why do we want to fall in this doubt that I am doing? Swami for decades had never said I am the doer. He said once he saw his own community from a distance, and he had worked so hard to start it. And he saw these lights in the wilderness, in the forest, and this thought came upon him. A few years ago, there was nothing over here. I came and I brought the students, and see, today there's light. And then he thought about it. He said, Kriyananda, do you like this thought that you did it? And he said, no, I'm not. I just don't do such small things. And he said, God did it through me. My Guru did it through me. And in that thought, he said, I felt so happy. And that is where non-attachment comes. And we have to practice non-attachment on some level. Non-attachment does not mean that we don't do anything well. If you are doing something for God, you give it your best. But on some level, the quality of non-attachment means we are not seeking personal glory over there. And while we are trying to be perfect in our seva, you might say, Master said the one goal, one thing which can help us the most, one tool, is that of meditation. Now, I think for deep meditation, the heart has to be quite clean. And that's why I mentioned non-attachment before. Because in deep meditation, slowly or sometimes quite quickly, the yogi understands and experiences the breathless state, where the breath slows down or finally goes. Now, when the breath goes down, what happens to the ego? Or let me put it the other way. What happens to our breath when our ego is challenged? Or some work is given to you and you're afraid of doing it. I won't do it. Better not touch it. Better not say yes to it. What happens to your breath? Becomes very irregular. So you're certainly not in the breathless state. You're actually breathless in another way. You're out of breath. You need more energy to do that project. You need to be intensely active and not say, I am not going to act at all. So when we can, in meditation, experience those breathless states, the natural understanding, उसको हम बोलते हैं विश्वास अवस्था. तो आपका विश्वास हो जाता है कि I am sitting over here, I am not breathing, a higher power is flowing through me, sustaining me, thinking through me, because you're thinking all these questions, and I am not the sustainer, I am not the doer. Something is flowing through me. And then you bring that experience into your daily seva, as a doctor, as a farmer, as a cook, as a driver, as whatever. And that's where Master said our path is of intense activity and intense meditation, that depth in one helps the other. Because again, when you come out and serve, it helps you purify your heart, your likes and dislikes. Your ego is refined when you serve other people, and that will deepen your meditation in time. And it's a lifelong process. So as Krishna said, I will come to most people at the end of their life. I think the way for us to realize is not to keep allowing our brains to spin over that thought, God is the doer. If God is the doer, let me observe that. Somebody said to Padre Pio, great saint of 1960s in Italy, and he was known as the miracle man, and this person said, Father, so many thousands of miracles you have performed. And he said, yes, I have witnessed them all. He didn't say, yes, I have done it. He said, I have witnessed them all. That again, when our energy is high, when that sense of I is not there, you are aware in every instant, through your prayers, through your sleep, through your anger, even in the Bhagavad Gita it says, that right things are happening, good things are happening. God is using you as an instrument. So I think our option is to keep raising our energy, to not be afraid to say yes to things, and to always call upon the Guru. Swami used to pray every day like this, may thy will be done, not mine. He used to repeatedly say till the end of his life, I cannot do this project. I doubt if I can do it. But then he would never let the statement over there. He said, but my Guru can do anything through me. My Guru can do anything, because if we say, I cannot find God, well, a wise person would say, you must not be having a Guru, or whatever. So we can find God, we can understand God is the doer by inviting Guru, by inviting their energy, inviting their presence, and trying to walk with that high speed and not be afraid. Because also spirituality has earned a bad name of laziness, inaction, non-involvement, escapism. And you say, that's not true spirituality. Krishna was not at all like that. Christ, Buddha, not at all. So how can we be right in the midst of things and channeling God? I think by putting ourselves in that situation, we can ultimately see, you look back actually, and you say, he was the doer. I thought it was my thought. I thought it was my energy. I thought it was my will. But I look back, there was something which was carrying me. And enough experience of that sort, of course, will bring us to the point where it becomes a truth and a reality for us.